Hey guys, welcome to Oxman Garage. Make sure you like and subscribe if you want to see more Mustang and Coyote content just like this. So in today's video, we're going to be installing this Dakota digital gauge cluster for the SN95 Mustang. That's going to cover the 1994 all the way to the 2004 Mustang. All right, so we're going to be installing this VHX Dakota digital gauge cluster on my 1998 Ford Mustang Cobra. This is a Coyote swap Gen 2. This has ported heads, ported manifold. We have a TR3650 transmission, just a really nice Coyote swap SN95 Mustang with lots of goodies. So the nice thing with this digital gauge is that it has the BIM module, which is going to plug and play with the OBD2 port. So we can pick up things like the tach, the voltage, the coolant, temperature, and we don't have to worry about wiring in those individual gauges. So that's a nice little feature. You can also hook up a GPS to this to read out the miles per hour on your speedometer. But we're going to be hooking up with the VSS sensor from the transmission and running a couple wires through there because we're not going to be doing the GPS option because it's a little pricey. So I will include where you can find the instructions at Dakota Digital if you're going to do this with your SN95. It's a little bit easier with the OBD2 port if you have a 96 all the way to 2004. If you have a 94, 95, you're going to have to plug everything individually, which can be a little time consuming, but just these gauges right here I think is completely worth it. It's got a nice stock look. This looks like it's CNC or it's some kind of plastic or it's 3D printed, but it's a nice fit and it's gonna bolt right into the stock location on your SN95 gauge cluster. All right, so we're gonna take everything out of the box. It comes in a nice sturdy box, comes with all the instructions, comes with the VHX control module, business card, sticker. We have the BIM module. We have the hardware pack for the Mustang. And we have the digital gauge cluster itself. We're just going to organize all this for you. Alright, so let's show you everything on the table. So first and foremost, we have the gauge cluster, which comes with the QR code for the instructions and then just gives you a notice that the speedometer and fuel level must be calibrated. See manual for instructions. We have the BIM module. This is really nice because this is going to hook up into your OBD2 port and you're going to be able to read your tach, your voltage, I believe your oil, water sensors, but not your fuel or your speedo unless you have the GPS. So we do not have the GPS. So this is going to be your hardware pack right here. This is for the Mustang. I believe there's the switch right here. It's the 1 and 2, and this is how you program a lot of the gauges to the cluster. We have all the instructions, the quick start guide. This is for the Ford speed sensor plug. This is for the actual SN95 VHX model. This is for the bus interface module, the BIM. And then this is just the VHX instructions. And like I said, I will put a link in the description of where you can find the instructions if you just want to do your homework on this cluster before you buy it. So just read through all the instructions. That's what I did before I bought this. You also get the VHX control module. So if you have a 94, 95, you're going to have to splice and tap into all of these parameters here without the BIM. And then you're going to get all of the hardware and fittings for each individual sensor, and then additional power cords to plug all of that in. So that's pretty much what you get in the box. There's all, like I said, there's other options that you can choose. So if you want GPS, there's a lot of other options. I'm not going to go into all of them, so that's your responsibility. Kind of go to the website and kind of see all the options of things that you want to add on. But definitely the BIM interface right here is going to make life a lot easier installing this, because it's all plugging into the OBD2 port, so you can get that live data going straight to the gauge cluster. Okay, so now we're going to disconnect the battery. It is crucial before working on any electrical components in your car. Unexpected sparks could damage sensitive electronics, so it's just good practice to disconnect the battery before you unplug anything. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to remove the stock cluster from SN95. And it's fairly simple, just a few steps to remove that. So first thing you want to do is just position the steering wheel kind of in the down position. The first thing we want to remove is the headlight switch right here. You're going to pull it all the way out and turn it so that you can see the little notch right here. And there's a little tab that you need to pry up on. Alright, so you want to remove two 7mm bolts that are on the top of the gauge cluster bezel. Go ahead and remove those. Okay, so after you remove that, go ahead and pry on the gauge cluster bezel. Should come off just like that. Kind of tilt it down and bring it off. Okay, so now this is going to expose 4 bolts that are holding the gauge cluster on, and those are going to be 7mm bolts as well. Go ahead and remove those. 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top. All right, so once you remove those 4 bolts, go ahead and bring the cluster towards you, kind of tilt it back. And then what you want to do is, on both sides, there's going to be connectors. There's going to be a black one and a white one. Go ahead and depress the little tab that holds it in there and remove it. Bring the cluster up and over, and it is now removed. All right, after you remove the stock gauge cluster from the vehicle, if you have a 1996 to 2004 Mustang, you're going to have the Passive Anti-Theft System, or PATS, on your vehicle. So once you remove this cluster, it's going to activate the PATS, where it's going to be a no run, no start condition. So in order to bypass that, if you have access to a tuner or someone who tunes vehicles, who has access to a tuning software where they can turn off that value and bypass the PATS system, you will be good to go. Alright, so another thing to note is, if you don't have a Coyote swap like me and you have the original SN95, just remember on step 4, the original cluster is directly connected to the alternator circuit. By removing the original cluster, you're creating an open circuit, which will result in the alternator not properly charging. So you need to have this little guy right here, which is a resistor, and the install kit includes an alternator load harness, which is this resistor, and you're going to connect the termination resistor between the colored wires as shown in this diagram right here. These wires can be located in the connector that connects the plugs to the original gauge cluster. Be sure the charging circuit remains functional. So in the SN95 kit, you're going to receive this resistor and you need to put that in there. So it's going to be there with the plug. So that is step 4 of the instructions. All right, so once we remove the gauge cluster, it's going to expose those 2 connectors that connected to the stock gauge cluster. On both of these connectors, you're going to have wiring that you're going to need to tap into, like for example, the left turn signal, the right turn signal, your hazards, your high beams, so like little things like that. So if you can go online, maybe on eBay, and get a wiring diagram for your model year Mustang to kind of see which colored wires go to where, because on the VHX digital gauge cluster from Dakota Digital, you're going to have to tap into those wires, splice into them, solder them, whatever you have to do to get those signals to the gauge clusters on the Dakota Digital to show those readings. All right, so I'm going to show you guys everything on the table. You have the control box, which is the brain behind everything that makes all the magic happen. This is going to be either behind the dash or behind the knee panel underneath the steering wheel. I'm going to have both of these mounted as such. I'm not sure if it's going to be behind the cluster or the knee panel. We have to figure that out. But anyways, this is how it's going to get set up. So here is the bus interface module right here. It's going to come with this harness right here. So it's going to get plugged in like that. And then this is going to go to the auxiliary right on the side right here. Okay. And then the input on the BIM is going to go right here. And then this is going to get plugged into your OBD2 port. Okay. So right there, after you get the ground and consistent 12 volts of power, and then accessory power, which you got to check a wiring diagram for your Mustang and find out what colored wire it's going to be. Once you have those 3 and you plug in this into the OBD2 port, that's done with. Next is the display cable. So this can go to different gauges or displays, which we're just going to be doing our gauge cluster. So it's going to plug in back here. It's kind of like an Ethernet cable. Get plugged in just like that. So once you have ground, consistent power, and accessory power, that right there is going to give you oil, voltage, RPM, and your water. Boom, those are done. That's how easy that's going to be. All right, so here's your switch. Your switch is going to get plugged into switch 1 and 2 right here. And this is how you're going to program. You're going to hold down 1 or 2 to kind of program different parameters for the speedometer and for the fuel when you plug those in and figure those out. All right, so now we're in the vehicle and we're looking at these 2 connections right here that was behind the stock instrument cluster. So you have that white connector and the black connector. And like I said before, all these colored wires kind of like do something that needs to be plugged into the VHX control box. So for example, like I said before, you have your left turn signal, your right turn signal, your high beams. Those are just going to be like a little light that lights up when you're turning left or turning right. Then you have like the VSS wires that give you a signal from the transmission to give you your output on the speedometer, your fuel gauge. So all these wires right here are color coded, and like I said before, if you go on eBay, you might find a book for the wiring diagram, and it lets you know all the colored wires of what they do So you can either get this on eBay or buy a PDF to find all of the coded wires and what they do. All right, so really quick, this is the instructions for the VSS speed sensor that's in your transmission. So when you get this this plug right here, it's going to be in a little baggie. You want to put that plug into the VSS sensor and take out the cable with that clip. Very important on the bottom. So from 83 to 04, there's going to be a gray and black wire, which is that one right there. If you can get it to focus, see that gray and black wire right there on top? Okay, so that gray and black wire is going to go to speed send. And your Mustang might be different. I know the 96 to 98 Cobra and maybe the GT and the V6 base models. I don't know, but it says you need to find and locate the VSS plus wire. See the plus wire right there? And on a 98 Cobra, it's going to be the orange and pink right there. So once that focuses, you're going to see the speed plus right there. I'm trying to get things to focus here. Yeah, all right, see that speed plus? That's going to be the orange and pink. All right, so if you check out this harness right here, this is for the 96 to 98 transmission harness. It might be the same for other years. I might be mistaken, but if you check this out, this plug right here goes to the engine bay, and then from the engine bay, it travels all the way to the transmission, where you have the rear backup light right here. Then you have the VSS plug right here that goes to the sensor that tells you how fast you're going in miles per hour. And then you have here is the rear O2 sensors, which gets the data after the catalytic converters. Now, if you check this out here, the two wires that are on the VSS, this is going to be the gray and the black, and the orange and the pink, and this is going to go all the way to the gauge cluster. And that's going to tell you the value of how fast you're going miles per hour that you need to plug into the VHX for the Dakota Digital. All right, so we have a majority of everything hooked up on the VHX control box. We have both of these stock instrument connections here, the white and the black. We do have some ends that are exposed, so if we possibly go into accessory or in the run position, there might see voltage here. So we're going to get some heat shrink here, and we're going to cap all these off so that they're not going to be touching anything metal. And then we're going to tuck both of those wires back here out of the way. We'll zip tie everything together, make it look nice and pretty. And then the VHX control box and the BIM module box are both going to get tucked back here behind the dash support beam. There's some foam back here where it's just going to be nice and secure. It's not going to be moving around. It doesn't need to be tied down or screwed in or mounted back there. It should be nice and secure back there. So we're going to put our digital dash in, and we're going to go over all the setup features. All right, so just show you an example. If you have any cutoff ends, just get some heat shrink, and then once it's like, you know, bonded to there, just pinch the end right here. It makes it as a good end cap. Also with these connectors too, see all this metal here. So if you get into accessory or the run position, these are all going to be hot. And if they touch bare metal, you might have a spark, blow a fuse, or even worse, have a fire. So just make sure you take some electrical tape and just wrap all around here so that's nice and sealed off. All right, so we have the Dakota Digital dash in place. We haven't bolted it down yet, so we're gonna go ahead and put it in accessory, not start it. And from what you can see, voltage is working and the fuel gauge is working, so that's good. Let's see, I've already kind of went through it a little bit, and I programmed it for the correct mileage of the vehicle. It's like 64,000 miles. I'll go through all the settings with you, so I'll go ahead and turn it over. So oil pressure is not there. We have RPM, so the tach is working. So yeah, I have no oil pressure. And I believe the temperature gauge is going to work here in a second. It's going to roll up the windows. I know I have oil pressure because I had glow shift gauges in here before and I had no problems with that. So voltage, tach, gonna test speedo when we go for a drive. Fuel works, and that needle should be starting to move any second. All right, so temperature gauge is working. It's obviously warming up. Tach is working. All right, so yeah, the oil pressure gauge is not working, so try and figure that one out. All right, so just an update on this oil pressure sender debacle that I'm going through. I ended up using an oil pressure sender from Glow Shift Gauges, so that is their 150 PSI, so I have no idea why the Dakota digital sender wasn't reading at all, so I ended up using their harness going all the way through the engine bay and just zip tying it to the firewall. So the good news is I now have oil pressure, and I don't know what it is with the Coyotes. I think the Coyotes have tons of oil pressure. So this one only goes to 80. And I went and got a mechanical gauge because I was just a little bit worried because I was going through all these senders and this was reading at 90 PSI at idle. It was at 600 RPM at idle, and it was like 90 PSI. So either way, fixed the oil pressure situation, so I'm glad that that was dealt with. All right, so we need to remove the old transmission harness. We got the car up on the 2-post lift, so that transmission harness is like right here. So we need to unplug it, fish it out, and put the new one in. It goes to this connection that's going to have our 2 wires going to our gauge cluster. All right, so we got the harness installed. We have it plugged in at the engine bay, starting from the passenger side, going to the driver's side, going down the transmission. As you can see, here is the backup light sensor, and then going to the OSS sensor. So this is a TR3650 transmission built by Handline Motorsports, so I do not have the VSS where you have to put the plug in. But yeah, that is the harness, stock harness, and you see the little rivets going in the original location. So nice stock fit. So now we're going to take this thing for a drive and see how the mile-per-hour speedo is working. All right, so great news. All the gauges have been calibrated. I went through all the instructions that come with the gauge cluster, and it's very simple to do. You just have to go to page 14, and that's how you kind of start everything. You kind of go through all of the gauges and whatnot. So go ahead and put this in accessory. Kind of show you all the gauges. So we have oil pressure, we have voltage, we have RPM. I calibrated the speedometer. We have water temperature, and then we have our fuel gauge. So everything is calibrated. I'm going to show you step by step on how to calibrate each of the gauges if you need to. All right, so here is the little switch that you get. There's going to be a 1 and a 2. So I'm just going to put this in accessory just to turn on the gauges. So over here to the left, this is going to be your speedometer and your odometer. So if you click the 1 on the button, you can scroll through the different items. So here's trip A, trip B. Here is kilometers per hour if you're Canadian. Here's the gear selector, and this could be another option that you buy from Dakota Digital if you want to see what gear you're in, but I don't have that option. And then it goes back to your odometer. So here on the tach, you want to hit the 2 line on the switch, and you can toggle through all that. So here's your tach for RPMs. This is the highest RPM I was in when I was driving the car just now. Here's a clock. Here is the outside air temperature, the intake air temperature coming into the engine, and then this is time, so if you want to time yourself. This is the highest speed that I went. 0 to 60, quarter mile, miles per hour, and then quarter mile time, and then back to your RPM. So that right there with the switch and going into accessory, hitting the 1 button over here for the odometer, speedometer, and then the 2 lines goes over here to the tach, so you can toggle through all those options. To go into setup mode, you want to hold down the 1 button and go into accessory for setup. So I'm going to hold the button down, go into accessory. We're now into setup. All right, so this is the setup. So this is on the speedometer, where the odometer would be, where it show you the total miles that are on your vehicle. The first thing is speed. So to set up speed, you would either have your normal setting or a bus setting, and bus would be coming from the computer of the car through your OBD2 port or through the sensor on your vehicle. So on here, you want to hold down the 1 switch button, and then it goes into these parameters. So you can adjust the sender, whether it's going to be bus or a sender coming from the transmission, auto, adjust, service, and output, and then that's the speed. So make sure you go through the instructions and go through all of that. So here's the tach. So hold down the 1 switch button. It goes to engine, update, warning, and done. Next is voltage. I don't have to mess with that. It's coming from bus, but we'll go into it. Just hold the 1 switch. You can set a voltage warning, and then just done. So you don't want your volts to be too high or too low. You can set a warning. So water, hold down the 1 switch to go into it, and you're either having a sender or the bus, and then here is the warning. If you get too hot, it'll set off a warning. And then test. So if you want to test it, it can give you a value. Well, the engine is off right now, but so that's fuel. So you're just going into, the test to test all those parameters. Okay, water done. We're done with water, so hold down the one switch. And here's oil. So the sender for oil for me, I set it at 100 psi because that's the sender that's compatible. But then you have bus that's coming from your computer through the OBD2 port, the 300 psi sender, the 150 psi, and then I have a 100. Okay, and then oil warning. If your oil gets too low, I'll give you a warning. You can set that. And then done. Now remember, I'm holding down the one switch. I'm holding down the one switch every time I have to be done with something. So here's fuel. Like I'm not going to go into this because I'm going to mess it up, but for the Ford fuel sender, it's the F100 to 150. Lighting, and this is to set up your BIM module, displays, info, set odometer. So you want to hold this down, and you can set the odometer if with the vehicle's odometer before you remove the stock cluster, and then back to speed. So that's pretty much how you set that up. So on the other side, we have the setup. So this is the 2 switch on the other side. You want to hold that down. You can adjust the contrast. On both sides. And then hold it down if you want it brighter. So like I said, here are the instructions. Make sure you go through them. I just gave you just a modest review of everything that you can use to display and set up your gauges. Here was the fuel setup that I was talking about before. So we're going to have the Ford. It's going to be F150. It's not an actual F150, but it's 200 ohms to 150. So that's the one that we're going to be using for our SN95 fuel sender. But yeah, these are all of the setup that you need to go through. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to put the cluster bezel back on, and the switch, we're going to drill a hole right here, and the switch is going to be right here. So easy to access it right behind the steering wheel if you need to use that. Really quick, one more note to add. To set up the speedometer so that it reads correctly, your transmission sensor that's in the transmission, which runs all the way up to the gauge cluster, is going to send out pulses. And what you need to do to calibrate this, while this is an accessory, you're going to hold down the one button and then you're going to start it while you're holding down the one button. And then that's going to go into setup mode while it's running. You want to go to speed, and then you want to go to calibrate the speedometer. So what you're going to do in calibration mode, you're going to drive 1 mile, so that you probably want to have someone else in the vehicle with you so they can help you, let you know when 1 mile has surpassed. So it's going to say in the little display pulses, and then as you start driving, and it's going to start adding up all the pulses, and it's going to go into thousands, 10,000. So however many pulses you're going to have in a 1 mile distance is going to determine how many pulses you need to activate the correct reading for miles per hour. So if you're going to do that, you probably want someone else in the car with their phone and a GPS to kind of let you know, hey, you just hit a mile. And then when you hit a mile, you're going to hit that one button switch, and that's going to calibrate it. So that's how you calibrate the speedometer for the SN95. All right, so we got it installed. We have the instrument cluster bezel on there. Looks nice and stock. I love the look of this. We have the button right down here, so we got 1 and 2 switches so we can operate all of our settings. I love this. It looks really, really nice. Look, we even have our left turn signal. We got our right turn signal. We got some high beam action. I really like this. This looks stock. It looks clean. Nice gauges. Alright guys, gonna wrap up this video. Make sure you like and subscribe if you want to see more Mustang how-to Coyote swap videos. We have them all here at Oxman Garage. If you have any comments or questions, comment down below. I'll answer them the best I can. We'll catch you guys on the next one. This is Josh from Oxman Garage.